WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wisi.org/donate or by texting WisI to 44321.
Sarah Harrison of Brookfield is the Democratic candidate for the 15th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Sarah Harrison, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for participating in our interview for candidates. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running?
So my key message is to listen and then lead, because I think we need to understand where the people are coming from, what the constituents value, and what their priorities are before we move forward and create that better future for the constituents.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that you would prioritize introducing?
Yes, I would want to introduce a bill that would codify our reproductive freedoms and replace the 1849 old law that's on the books and really put in no uncertain terms where our freedoms lie. Right now, that 1849 law has had various judgments with various opinions, and people are in a little bit of limbo right now with that.
So if you're elected, you'd be entering the Assembly during a biennial budget year.
Yes.
The state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
So I would put more funding into schools, and then also return more of that money to our local municipality and county governments so that they can fund things such as emergency services and infrastructure improvements.
So you're talking about a couple of spending priorities. What about taxes? Are tax cuts, tax reform a part of your platform?
I think that it's more important for us to invest in the state than to cut back. We have seen historically over the past decade or so that we've been cutting and cutting and cutting, and that's why we've had some surplus. But we also have local governments that are really in dire need of additional funding. So that spending, to me, is going to be more important. If we want to look at taxation, we can look at things such as the top 1% of earners. So that would be, in Wisconsin, around $475,000 a year and up. We can also look at things such as what our corporate tax rates look like. But I think for your average middle class folks, we're going to stay as is because they can't afford to bring any of that up.
So K-12 education,
yes,
a priority for many Wisconsinites. You mentioned it as a spending priority for you. What do you think is going well, or maybe what needs to change in K-12 education?
Sure. Excuse me. So I've been very involved with public education as an advocate. I did actually run for Waukesha School Board a couple years back, and I've definitely been vocal about my views on things. And what we really need to do is make sure that we're creating a supportive environment for our teachers, for our parents, and for our students. So we have multiple stakeholders, and they need to be in a learning environment where they feel comfortable and they are given the tools that they need.
Is there something happening in the legislature that you would like to see change with regard to K-12 education?
Well, I mean, other than funding so that we can appropriately compensate our teachers and repair our buildings and that kind of thing, I'm not aware of anything that's currently in legislation that I would jump on, but I would like to see.
You talk about that overall increase, which maybe addresses some of the priority areas you're talking about. What about higher education? Four-year colleges, two-year colleges, technical colleges.
Yes.
What does the future of that system look like to you, and what should the legislature's focus be? Sure.
So there needs to be a balance between all three types of educations, right? We've got, tech schools, we've got 2 years, and we've got 4 years. I personally have an MBA from University of Wisconsin-Madison. My daughter is is a junior at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and so I very much value those programs, but we also need those tech schools because we have a lot of people aging out of the workforce, especially in the skilled trades. We need to make sure that we're bringing the next generation along so that those folks who are interested in those type of roles can get trained up and can be ready to hit the ground running.
Should the legislature be focusing differently in that area or funding it differently?
Well, we need to put more funding into higher education in general. I think in terms of what the balance needs to look like, I'm a numbers person, and so I would want to look at some spreadsheets and figure out exactly what that balance should be. But I will say right now we should put more funding into the schools, and without putting any sort of political conditions on it, such as what happened last year.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
Yeah, so I think we have a couple of things. One is, as is happening across the nation, folks are aging out of the workforce, and we don't have as many people entering the workforce. So that's one thing. But another thing that we are really dealing with here in Wisconsin is that the average two-income family spends 17% of their income on childcare for one child. So it does not always make sense for both parents to work. And then you've got fewer people entering the workforce because they're staying home to take care of the kid. If you do that by choice, that's great. But if it's because of a financial need, that starts to cause a problem. So not only do we have fewer people entering the workforce, there's also one less income that is being put back out into our community, and so it brings all of our economy down in multiple ways.
So you see the legislature continue to invest in incentives?
Yeah, I would love to see the Child Care Counts program become a permanent program.
Workforce question, again, investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes, absolutely. And they, of course, would have to have the skills that are necessary, but if we don't have enough people to fill those jobs with residents, we should be investing again in those tech schools. But absolutely, hiring Wisconsinites when they are available and meet their requirements, yes.
Priority. Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yeah, I am aware of it, and I think we need to hold those contractors to account, that they need to be following the rules, have people properly classified. Those individual workers or subcontractors do not have a lot of leverage in that relationship, and we need to be able to protect their rights to have the employment protections that they should have, such as health insurance or unemployment, that sort of protection.
Moving on to housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control or building more rentals?
For me, I would pursue building more rentals, and that gives more opportunity to folks. I'm not a big fan of rent control. I know this is an issue that's come up in various, city councils, village councils, et cetera, and the people who work in an area and support the economy of an area should have an opportunity to also live in that area, and that's why we need to build more affordable housing.
Healthcare. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Well, first and foremost, we need to go ahead and take that federal money that's been on the table for the last 10 years in terms of the ACA. Wisconsin is one of only 10 states that is not taking that money currently. And the original argument was, well, what if it goes away? Well, it's been a decade, guys. It's not going away. We need to take that money, put it to use. We do also need to ensure that we have affordable and accessible health care and also child care across the state. We have deserts, healthcare deserts, where people have to travel an amount that can be insurmountable for some folks, and so they're not getting the care that they need, and that's especially true when it comes to reproductive health care.
Mental health care is a growing concern for many Wisconsinites and concern for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care?
Yeah, so mental health care is health care. I have the good fortune of having a mother who has a PhD in psychology, and so I have learned a lot from her over the years. She worked in a clinic as a therapist, and so I understand from kind of both sides of the desk, from anonymized information, of course, that people are not going to be physically healthy if they're not in a good mental health space. And I know there are folks out there that are saying, oh, well, we never used to have these problems. I think truly it's that people weren't identifying the issues and understanding the issues historically, and now we have a better understanding, so we can help give more support and more aid to those folks who are having issues.
What's a step for the legislature to take with regard to mental health?
I would love to see it classified as just health care, where it would need to be covered by your insurance. And I mean, we can have a whole other conversation about insurance, but I know that's not necessarily, we only have so much time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Abortion policy, you mentioned reproductive care as one of your priorities. How should Wisconsin specifically move forward on the issue of abortion?
Yeah, so reproductive health care, including abortion, should be a decision between the patient and their healthcare provider and anyone else they wish to consult, if it's a faith leader or a family member, any of those things. It's a very personal decision. And we've seen nationwide that reproductive health care is not just abortion. We've seen the scope creep to include things like IVF. I personally had precancerous cells 2 years in a row, and so I had a hysterectomy 8 years ago, but I still was at childbearing age, so would that be allowed? Would that be okay under strict rules and laws that have been proposed in other areas?
So you don't see any limits on access to abortion?
I do not.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that they are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Yeah, so we are very much a car-based area. We do have some public transit in the form of buses and whatnot, but mostly it's cars. And 94 runs through my district, so we want to, of course, keep up on maintenance all there. The other thing that I would say goes back to my earlier statement about bringing more of that shared revenue back to the local municipalities and counties so that they can continue with their scheduled repairs. I know that there have been times where road repairs have been kicked down the road, no pun intended, because the budget didn't allow for it.
Environment. PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
Yeah, absolutely. PFAS is an important issue, and I'm really disappointed that there was money that was allocated and has not yet been delivered to help with this problem, and largely because folks don't want to hold the polluters accountable, and that's part of what's holding up the funding. It's a problem statewide. I know specifically in my district within the Pewaukee area that we have a PFAS issue, and it needs to be addressed, cleaned up, and avoid any future pollution as well.
We are down to the last two questions. Right. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Sure. So I am a lifelong community advocate. I have been doing community service since I was 8 years old and I was in 4-H. I started knocking doors when I was 19. I've always been involved with trying to make life better for everyone. I'm a firm believer that we all do better when we all do better. My opponent is much more concerned with minimizing the taxes for the top earners. My opponent proposed a 14-week abortion ban, co-authored that bill. My opponent always gets an A from the NRA, and I'm a gun sense candidate. We have a lot of differences. That said, I truly believe everyone who comes into this is trying to do their best. They just need to listen.
Final question. So let's say you're elected this fall. You get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings parties together. What is that one issue?
You know what I would say is I would love to see campaign finance reform where I, as a candidate, am more concerned about talking to my constituents than how much money have I raised, because that's what I should be doing. I should be out there listening. I shouldn't be asking for money.
Well, Sarah Harrison of Brookfield is the Democratic candidate for the 15th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Sarah Harrison, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.